All right. Boom. We are here. Yes, indeed. It is another edition of the Friday FARcast. And it looks like it's me and my good buddy, Michael Sisternino. What's going on, Michael? We got Janine is in the house. Hi, Janine. Always good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Freaknella. What's happening, Freaknella? Oh, we got a deer in the backyard. We got a deer. Hello, deer. Hello, dearie. Looking for a little shade. A little something to munch on. Sometimes they get trapped in the backyard. They eventually figure it out. Got a 3-foot fence. Little cyclone-y thing. Joseph Fabry. Hi, Joseph. By the way, I love the name Freaknella. It's a great name. Laura E. Hello there, Laura E. I'm going to take a little bit of my secret. I can't even show you it. That's how secret it is. My secret elixir from True Hemp Science. It is kind of off the label, off the brand. I wish I could share it with you, but I can't. Perhaps one of these days, when we live in a more fair and just world, where powerful psychedelics can be taken in elementary school. No, I'm just kidding about that. Look at that little deer getting some shade. Hello, Sharon Lewis, listening at work. Hi, Meow Meow. Rand from Rainy, Canada. I still got money on Alberta being part of the United States. We looked at that astrologically about a month ago now. The alignments were crazy. I'd be very surprised if it didn't happen. Look, we got Uranus and Gemini coming. Pluto is already there in Aquarius. Neptune and Aries. Everything is on the table. Everything. Boundaries, borders, everything. By the time we're done with most of this, which I would say would be 7 years out from 2026, 2030 would be 2033. That sounds like a very it's like a very powerful year, doesn't it? 2033. It'll be here before you know it. Close your eyes, and Rip Van Winkle in 2033 will be here, and hopefully the majority of us will be here as well, in sound mind and body. But yeah, we're just getting started. 2026 is the big year. I know everybody says it like it's going to be, this is the big, but really 2026 is, because that's when all the outer planets move into their signs, and they're not going back, they're not retrograding, and everything is on the table. Everything. Let's see who else we have here. Sun Tzu. Hi, Sun Tzu. Catherine Faulkner. Hello, Catherine. Lots of love back to you. There's my guy, Tom. Tom Jordan's here, Kabuki Theater. Hello, Bo. Let's see, who else? HHR, also known as Healing Heart Rosie. So I think it's pretty official now that I will be teaming up with the Leo King, my guy, David Palmer. Hi, Kate the Gardener. In October, the middle weekend in October, in, of all places, Frisco, Texas. Over Florida. What's going on? What's going on, Longo? Dr. Longo in the house. I got to get him up on the screen. I got to give him up on the screen right there. We got to get back together. Look, we know what we need to do either this Sunday night or next Sunday night, because Neptune is in Aries, and I've been getting into all of the kind of egregore of the Civil War stuff. We got it. We're gonna have to get you on a Sunday night, either this Sunday or next Sunday, and talk about the Knights of the Golden Circle and KFC and all that stuff, because I think it's really, really relevant. And we had talked about actually doing that. And I remember saying to you, like, yeah, let's do it. Let's find the right spot and the right time. I think we're there. We got the sun in Gemini. We got Jupiter in Gemini. right? The reflection of epochs and eras in time. So let's talk offline. Long ago, let's set it up. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I always love that deep vegetarian Southern gravy that Longo brings to the show. He gets that good vegetarian brew. Set up that gravy. All right, let's see who else we have here. Amy Gill. Darlene's here. The lovely and talented one. Saving Austin one tooth at a time. There she is. It would help the show if you did hit the like and subscribe. Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Okay, we're in, man. We are in. Team it up. Teaming up with the doctor. The doctor. Let's see. Magic Cat with an ICK. Almost all cats are magic. You guys should check out, like, Jones Kitten should have his own fucking show. I'm not kidding you. You know, it's like everybody says kittens are really cute. Kittens are really, no, this cat is a trip. This kitten is a trip. He's a little goofball. He looks goofy. Like some cats look goofy. He looks goofy. He'll do this thing where he sticks his tongue out a little bit and hangs out. I mean, he's a goofy little cat. But then he also thinks he's Superman. And he's jumping everywhere. And he's a trip, man. This cat is a trip. He needs his own. If that cat had its own YouTube show, it would get millions of views. I'm telling you right now. I should exploit that cat. I should start just doing Jet the Wonder Years or something like that. I'm serious, man. People just like outtakes of his life there. He's hilarious. I need what Robert's smoking this afternoon. No cannabinoids have passed these lips. I am on a natural high, man. I'm on a natural high. It is the lack of chemtrails in the air, so the aether is circulating quite nicely. Oh, we have Hope Easton. What's going on, Hope? Do it. Get the kitty for you. I know, right? I'm telling you. It just popped into my brain. Like, we could get millions of fucking views on Jet. I'm serious. I don't know where we were. But one time there was this kid. I mean, maybe Joan can like refresh my memory, but I got onto this kick about these kids that have YouTube channels and they have millions and millions of views. I mean, millions of views because their parents exploit them and they do like, stupid kid shit that other kids like to watch. Ooh, look at him. And I remember there one time we ran across this very precocious young girl with their parents. And I was trying to convince their parents to let me manage the kid and start a YouTube channel. And I was actually kind of half serious because this kid was a trip. Like this kid had talent. And like I'm telling you, trust me on this. I'm not a weirdo, but I could turn your kid into a YouTube superstar. And I bet you, man, there are people that are out there that are like that. They're walking around hunting. I mean, they're not like total predators. Like they don't want to get, all pedo on them. But they see dollar signs when they see a really precocious kid and they think YouTube channel, right? People hate on YouTubers, but I think it does keep you young. Okay, so I'm on a natural high too, right on Alaska Raven. I'm right there with you, man. Although I don't know if Alaska Raven is a man or a woman. I'm just supposing that with the name Alaska Raven, it's a man, but it may not be a man. So I'm right there with you, Alaska Raven, they, them. Just to keep it politically correct. My man Steve is here. What's going on, Steve? Get to see old Thor at the door. Kittens Cupcakes with Peaches. Peaches would not make a good YouTube show. I'm just saying. Peaches is like the Greta Garbo of cats. I want to be alone. I want to be alone. So I want to bring this. Oh, it was your cousin. Oh, that's right. It was Joan's cousin. I'm telling you, man. She might be a little old now. Like she's kind of aging out a little bit. You know, I'd have to have that talk with her parents at a certain point. She's really cute. She's really adorable, and she's very precocious. But she's getting a little old, and I think we're going to have to start to wind this down and create sort of the end story. Let's start creating the end story here. But no, I'm serious. That girl's she is so precocious. She's almost annoying. You ever run across kids like that? Like it's really cool for about 15, 20 minutes. Like, wow, look at all the tricks they can do. But then they don't stop doing them. Do you know those kids? It's like, whoa, okay. But if you're doing a YouTube channel, though, at least there's some kind of reciprocal relationship with it. You said I should start YouTubing Enki. Oh, absolutely. 100%. Enki should have his own YouTube channel. Enki would be a fucking YouTube star. And this is the title for his show. First of all, Enki, come on, what a name, right? And I would have it be Enki, the reluctant Aquarian show dog. That's what I would call him. Oh, Enki, a rebel without his paws, or something like that. Although you don't want to have Enki, like people thinking, oh my God, he doesn't have any paws. But you got to work in the Aquarian theme and his reluctance to be a show dog. That's your narrative arc for Enki. Enki's like a fool in a good way. Fools are good. We need fools. Sometimes I like to act a fool. I'm a man. Okay, Alaska Raven, thank you for clearing that up. I don't want to insult anybody, although quite often I do. Ratchet Boo, what's happening? Hey, we got Janice Phillips in the house. Nice, good vibes today. That's right, we got good vibes. How will the good vibes survive when I start talking about Diddy and hell? Can we keep the two together? Are they mutually exclusive? I don't know. We're going to find out. Stick around. Let's see who else we have. I think we're pretty much caught up here. I want to go back to a comment that Longo brought up. It's about YouTube. Let me just see. People hate YouTubers, but I think it does keep you young. I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. I do think it keeps you, because I think YouTube is amazing. I really do. I think YouTube is one of the most important technologies that we've ever had at our disposal. It gave us, me and you, people like Longo and anybody else who is, cruising around in chat or watching this, it gave us the power to be independent producers and content creators, because I was around long enough to know what it was like in a pre-YouTube universe. And it was not an easy world. Like if you wanted to be a media person in a pre-YouTube universe, there were like certain paths that you could take. If you were going to take the TV path, which I was going to when I was in college, that's where I started off. I did 2 years at a college. I did broadcast communications arts, and I was really, really good. I was like this young hotshot 19-year-old producer. One of my teachers, who was a real hard ass, pulled me aside one day and he said, you could be the next Don Ohlmeyer. If you don't know who Don Ohlmeyer is, Don Ohlmeyer produced the Olympics. And this is a guy that was not given to praise, let me tell you. Right. So when he said that to me, he was like, "Ooh." And even then, I didn't really quite understand it. Because, when you're 19, like, you're not completely all there. Like, I was running on a lot of chutzpah and street smarts and creativity and Yeah. So those kinds of statements are almost incomprehensible in some ways. But that's what you did. You went through that sort of portal, right? And then you became familiar with three sides of broadcast. If you're going to be in TV, you're either going to be in front of the camera talent or you're going to be behind the camera. And behind the camera, you have the technical side. And then you also have the production and the writing side. So those are the three kind of areas. And engineering kind of goes along with being behind the camera. So that's what you did. And when you got a degree, in whatever one of those like areas that you specialized in, you would start off in a really small market, some shithole town. And if you were on-air talent, and let's say you were a sports on-air talent guy, you might be on the CBS affiliate in Modesto, right? Like that's where you would start, and the pay wasn't really good, and then you would wind up covering national sports, maybe whatever the closest local team was, like maybe the Dodgers or something. You might cover their scores, and then you do high school shit, right? And on the news side, pretty much the same thing, and that's really how you started in the TV world, like in that realm. If you wanted to get into different types of TV production, which in the 70s and the 80s, you would go to Hollywood, and there would be television shows, again, mostly produced in the 70s by the three major networks. Every now and then they'd outsource some of their production to independent production companies who would create TV series, whether they were comedies, dramas, cop shows. They don't really have cop shows anymore. They got rid of the cop shows for the most part. But like that was an angle that you could take. You could get in on that part of the business, right? That was TV. Then you had like public access, which was really just starting to kind of get off the ground. It wasn't really that big at that time because the equipment was so expensive. When I first started doing this, and like the TV thing, right around 1979, the first digital editors were coming online. And those were game changers because everything was just numerical. All you needed to do is know where the numbers were at a certain point in the video. You could go back to that. That was it. There wasn't a lot of like going back and forth. Like it saved so much time, digital editing. And then the first version of small handheld digital, these would be digital video cameras. They came out. So literally you could have these small cameras that you could purchase. They were pretty expensive back then. They were probably around $3,500 in like the 70s. That was a fair amount of money. But if you had one of those, and I knew a guy, and we kind of worked together on stuff. You were one of the few people in the Bay Area who would actually have one of those cameras, and you could go out, you could shoot footage, you could sell it to the local affiliates. So you could do it, but it wasn't really that easy. The radio side was kind of easier because it had been around longer. There was a lot of, sort of public radio, low watt stations, and you didn't really have to have a whole lot of qualifications. Where I grew up in the Bay Area, we had college radio like KPFA, KZSU, KPFA being Berkeley. Anybody could get on KPFA, pretty much. It would help if you had a special interest because KPFA was just built that way. So the radio side was easier, right? But if you wanted to break through and get into something more mainstream or have like a larger audience, you'd have to be really, really good. You would have to have a radio voice. You would have to understand like, breaks and, whoa, look at that deer just jumped right over the fence. Look at that. That's beautiful. You had to kind of know the game. And you could learn that in school. I mean, they used to have the Columbia School of Radio Broadcasting. You could go there. And after 2 years, you would know how to do things. And there were other things that went along with it, like writing news copy. And there's a lot of stuff with radio. You'd have to learn how to sort of back announce, back time. You have to figure out where the time was as you came to the top of the hour and, work it backwards so you could hit your mark in 5 minutes either before or the top of the hour, the bottom of the hour. That's when you play your commercials. So there were a lot of things that went on with that, but you could learn that. And yet, radio was still kind of handcuffs. You could be a talk show host, but you couldn't be too controversial. If you were too controversial, the station would lose sponsors. The guy that changed all that was Rush Limbaugh. And Rush Limbaugh, came up with the word feminazi. And so Rush Limbaugh is a pioneer in all of this because he gets a lot of other people to think about the medium in a very, very different kind of way. So I was never a big Rush Limbaugh fan because I always felt like, you're only getting to the tip of the iceberg. You got to go a few layers deeper. And if you did, boy, you'd be one of the most important people in American media history. But he couldn't do that, right? He just couldn't do that because, of course, he has sponsors and he wants to have longevity. And I remember when Rush Limbaugh got canceled, he was on part of it. He was on the Monday Night Football team or crew, right? It was a Monday Night Football, and they thought Rush Limbaugh would be great. And he started to say things that were pretty politically incorrect. And he wasn't wrong. He was not wrong. And it was like, great idea. They didn't want the conservative version of Howard Cosell. Go back to radio. But he was a game changer. And I guess what I'm getting at is that there were a lot of different layers that you had to either master or not master, have a good working knowledge of. And even when you got there, you were kind of playing by their rules. You couldn't just do what we're doing now. And I think that this is an amazing tool, an amazing thing, and I know that I have issues and I have had issues with this platform. I got deplatformed in 2020 when Donald Trump was running for president, and I was deplatformed intentionally. And the crazy thing was, I wasn't even a crazy MAGA person or Trump guy. Because I could go, I can go a little critical on Trump, but I got caught in the wash, and eventually I got one of my channels back because they made a mistake. I had two channels, and the channel that they basically deplatformed me from was not my astrological channel. And I said, you made an error here. You just banned both of my channels. If you're going to be fair, ban the one that you think is problematic, and the one that isn't, you need to let me have it back. And they reviewed it, and I got it back. And it was a rare, really, really rare moment when, I actually won against YouTube. And so that's one of the reasons why I have a channel on Rumble, because there is content that I cover on Rumble that I do not want this channel to necessarily be subjected to, because this channel is really important to me and what I do on an astrological level, right? It is really my bread and butter. It is my tabula rasa. Everything else sort of exists as a connection to it, right? But I feel like I have other things to say that aren't just going to be astrological every week. So that's why I have the Rumble channel. And part of what I'm going to do today is go over a story that I covered on Rumble that I talked about a bit this week over on the Astro Weather. And I'm going to do a summation of the last 3 days because I think they're really, really important. Like what I was digging into. And as a Virgo, I have never been very good at self-promotion. I'm just being honest. There are other people who are much, much better at self-promotion. But I have to kind of break the mold here on this. And other people have told me this as well, that the three days and the story that I covered that's related to Cassie and Sean Diddy Combs and her now husband, Alex Fine, nobody is talking about. Nobody has made the connections. Nobody has dug into the dirt in the way that I have done over the last 3 days. So I feel like it's incumbent upon me to share some of that with you so that you understand not just what I do over there, but this story, which I think is very, very important, not just from the Diddy perspective and what's going on in this trial, whatever it is, but also from a very deep cultural perspective. And there are astrological elements to it, which I can bring it back to. The other thing that I want to talk about today is, and I'm going to get into this a bit more on Saturday night, and it has to do with Saturn in Aries, which is, coming at us like a freight train. Now, we'll retrograde and have a cooling out period for a while in Pisces, but it comes back again next year full time for 3 years. And there's an element of Saturn in Aries that popped into my brain pretty much yesterday, and it really was in a lot of ways inspired by my father, which I'll talk about in detail when I get to the Saturn and Aries part and the relationship between Saturn and Aries and the Greek god, the forge of the underworld, Hephaestus. And I'm going to talk about that as it relates to Saturn and Aries, how my father plays a role in that, and also men in general. And even Diddy is related to this Saturn and Aries and Neptune in Aries, because when you think about Hephaestus, right, where is he? Well, what is the underworld? The underworld is hell, right? It is hell. And when you see pictures of Hephaestus, he is depicted literally in a cave that's a smoking inferno, because he is the smith, he is the forge, and he does like the work of the gods in the underworld, and he's related to creating armaments, swords, which are very Aries, right? Armor, plate armor, but other things as well. Hephaestus rules blacksmiths, welders, jewelers, anybody that is involved in the craft and art of vulcanization, using fire to create something, using steel, using metals, using the elements to heat them, burn them, forge them under, at times, tremendously intense and powerful and grueling conditions, the underworld. And so when I think of Diddy and the freak off, and a lot of men, clearly some women involved too, right? But a lot of men, and that's like the underworld. That when I think of the freak offs, I think of these men like in these like inferno like places, whether it's their own body heat, or whether it's their own sort of unchecked kind of animalistic sort of fever that is spreading through the space like a unchecked wildfire, or maybe it's the demonic heat that is surging through their spirit, right, and creating that spiritual intensity, and not in a good way, right? In any way you want to frame that, like they are in hell, and they are performing hellish acts upon one another. So Diddy, in a lot of ways, is really the guide to the underworld. And astrologically, he's a Scorpio, right? He is a Scorpio. Diddy is an underworld character. That's where he dwells. His father worked for Frank Lucas. His father was a criminal. He is the son of a father who literally worked in the underworld. That is Sean Diddy Combs. That's who he is. He's a scorpionic underworld figure. he is much more comfortable in many ways in the hell realm than this world. The other thing that I find interesting about the relationship with Cassie and Diddy, and I may get into this astrologically on Sunday night, but one of my favorite movies is I believe the director was actually French, but it was shot in Brazil. And the title of the movie is called Black Orpheus. And I believe the director's name is Max Ophuls, Ophulus, Max Ophuls. And it is a retelling of the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. But it is set amongst Carnival in Brazil. It is black and white. I'll never forget the first time I saw this movie. I might have been around 13 years old, and it was during the summer. I don't know how old I was. I wasn't young, but I also wasn't old. And we used to have this show on called Dialing for Dollars. And it was a stupid fucking show because nobody ever won the money for Dialing for Dollars. But they would play movies, and then during the break, one guy, I think it was like Mike Cleary, they have all these names from the phone book. Like actually some fucking intern had to cut out all these little names in the phone because there are names that people have their phone number. Like that's a whole other part of the world that it no longer exists. There was a thing called the phone book. You can actually look up somebody's fucking phone number, believe it or not. Yeah. And if you had a business, you had the yellow pages. What an amazing kind of lost, world. And they have white pages online, but now you got to pay for that shit. Like if you want any decent kind of like search on anybody, it takes you through the rigmarole. Please wait while we provide the next level of details for your search. You just used to have a fucking phone book. Open it up. Oh, there, right? But that's what they do. They like cut up these little strips, and then they put them in this thing, right? Mike Cleary pull out Today we'll be calling Hazel McIntyre of Corte Madera. Let's see if Hazel is there. He'd actually dial the phone. They have the phone hooked up. Sometimes the person would answer. Sometimes it would answer. A lot of times people were actually working. So, and there was no like, tape recorded voicemail back then. You were there, you weren't. And they would get, hello, is this Hazel? Yes, this is Hazel. Hi, Hazel. This is Mike Cleary from Dialing for Dollars. Hi. Hi. How can I help you? Well, Hazel, we picked your name and number randomly today, and it is your chance to win the jackpot if you can tell us the count and the amount. I don't know. I don't know. I don't watch much TV. Like that's how most of the fucking conversations would go. Nobody would get it. Every now and then somebody might get it because they'd reset that count and amount. But I'm watching Dialing for Dollars one day, and this movie comes on. It's Black Orpheus. And I don't know what it's about. And I'm watching this thing. I'm like, what the hell is this? I've never seen anything like this before. I don't know what it is, but I really like it. First of all, it's all in Portuguese. You got to read the subtitles. And it's set against Carnival. And so you get to see all that, as your kid for the first time, you get to see all that Carnival stuff. And even if it's in black and white, it's kind of mind-blowing. And then the story is that Orpheus is he's a musician. He's a poet. If you want to hear a great song about Orpheus, go find David Sylvian and his song Orpheus. It is one of the greatest songs of all time. One of my favorite songs. I used to play it a lot when I was on Blog Talk Radio. And so Orpheus is like a minstrel. And he's a romantic. And he's in love with Eurydice. And in the telling of the tale, what happens to Eurydice? She's taken to the underworld, right? She's captured by Hades. and Orpheus is looking for her everywhere. And so through a strange series of, like events, and even like consulting this woman who does like candomblé or yoruba or whatever, right? Like he finds out that she is in hell. And so in the movie, he has to descend into hell to find her. And there she is. She is the concubine of Hades in the underworld. And Hades makes him a deal. He says, you can have her back, but you will have to leave alone. You will have to return to the world of light and air on your own. And you cannot look back. And if you look back, you will lose Eurydice forever. So that's the deal. And Orpheus takes the deal. And in the movie, it actually shows him sort of kind of ascending, these stairs and whatever, right? And then Hades, who's the devil, plays a trick on him. And he pretends to sound like Eurydice. And he pretends to sound like Eurydice is in distress. Of course, Orpheus, being a caring man, devoted to the woman that he's gone to the depths of the underworld to retrieve, it immediately grabs his attention. And what does he do? He turns around to look back to see if she's okay, and she was fine. But he broke the deal. The devil had tricked him. Orpheus had to steel himself. He had to steel himself to continue to make his way out of the underworld. He had to deal with potentially losing her, harm, whatever his fear was, or whatever his valor was. You see, the devil found Orpheus's weak spot. He found his weak spot, and he whispered in his ear, and he whispered in the ear of Orpheus, sounding like Eurydice. And then she's gone forever. And then Orpheus is left to roam the earth for the rest of his days, singing songs of lament about his lost love, Eurydice. It's a tragic, beautiful story. And in Black Orpheus, with samba and carnival in the background, and the Orpheus character literally being a sambaista, it's incredible. It's an incredible movie, and I highly, highly recommend it. In fact, I used to work at this record store, used record store, and we had a copy of the soundtrack, and I would play it all the time in the store, and people would they would love it. Because it's kind of ambient, and there's some dialogue in it. What we're looking at with Diddy and Cassie is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. This is really what this is about. Okay? And who is Sean Diddy Combs as a Scorpio? He is Hades. He is hell, right? He is the ruler of the underworld, which are the freak offs and all the illicit, not just illicit, but extremely taboo behavior. Diddy is the master of ceremonies in the underworld. And Cassie is Eurydice. That's who she is. Now, I'm not making a claim that Alex Fine is Orpheus. I don't think he is. I don't think he's Orpheus. Although you could theoretically make a case that he might be Orpheus, but he doesn't pass the test. Now, what's interesting is that ultimately she does get out of the underworld, right? She navigates her way out of the underworld. And it is Diddy who introduces her to Alex Fine, because Alex Fine was Diddy's trainer. And then Alex Fine steps in, and he is in many ways the new Diddy. And what I find interesting about both Alex and Cassie, they're always dressed in black. Always in black. And I know they're millennials, and it's kind of like a real color with millennials and Pluto and Scorpio. But there's in as much as they want to like project this family vibe, and they have all these pictures of them and their kids, and he's got this tattoo that says almost home. Like they really want to project this wholesome nuclear family vibe. I can't not disassociate my spidey senses that they're dark, that there's a dark energy around these two. And even with the kids and the normalization and the family life, for me, it doesn't really change anything. There's a dark energy here. And I think in a lot of ways, right, like Cassie is still in hell, because here's the devil whispering in Cassie's ear, right? This is Hades whispering in her ear. Get the money. Get the money. You suffered for those 11 years when you were flying on the private jet in first class and going to Italy and getting all the designer stuff right out of the showroom. You were suffering so badly. And you were arranging those freak off parties, and you were being put through all that trauma and stress. Get the money. A good friend of the show, Lyle Coyote, tipped me off to one of the things that would happen in Diddy World back in the day, is that Cassie and Diddy would go to clubs, and Cassie was in charge of like rounding up girls to bring them back to Diddy World. Cassie was the rabbit. She was the rabbit into the underworld. Right? Oh, come on back. We have so much fun. We got Ciroc, we got Cristal, we got and the men are going to be there. And let me tell you about the men. Right? Like that was the role she played. And so what would have been okay. So for a minute, we're going to say just for a minute that Alex Fine is Orpheus, and he's leading her out of the underworld. And Diddy is Hades, the Scorpio. And Cassie, by the way, she's a Virgo, so she plays the role of like the Virgin. Just keep that in mind. Hades whispered in their ear, get the money. Now, if he was really Orpheus, he would not have subjected his wife to what's going on. It would be, we're not looking back. That is the metaphor, right? You have to trust and not look back. That is the lesson. You have to master your fucking fear and not look back. And this, by the way, is psychologically related to relationships, whether they're good or whether they're bad. Like once you make up your mind and make a decision, you're going to go down that path. You cannot look back. And so what did they do? They look back. They look back. They look back on, the torture, the abuse, all the gruesome things that, by the way, as an adult, even if she might have had some version of Stockholm syndrome, she consented to. We're going to look back at that. This is what's happened. Right? We're going to look back at that. And we're going to bring it up, and they're going to talk about it in the trial. They're going to expose everything. If Alex Fine, who theoretically is the head of the household, let's just call it, because he's such a strong and supportive man, which is how he's being like painted, he would have said, Cassie, I love you. I love our family. And I do not want to subject you to revisiting that hellish world that you were in. I don't want you to put you and our family front and center and have to bring that up and share that. I don't care how much money we don't have. Like, yep, we could get a lot of money. But she was with him when she filed the suit against Diddy. Okay, she was with him. He wrote a check the next day. And let me tell you why I think Diddy wrote that check. Did he want it to go away? Absolutely. Did he care about Cassie? I bet he did. I bet he did. In whatever weird, twisted way that Sean Combs could bond with an individual that had some degree of emotional content, I think he actually cared about her. Believe it, and he probably felt guilty as shit for some of the things he did, because if you watch him now, playing the Christian guy, I'm sure a little bit of guilt has sort of seeped into his spiritual veins. He cut her a check, done. Then they get another 10 mil from the hotel. But if you're Alex Fine, it's like, are you okay with me as a trainer, kind of a budding actor? Look, it's not the same lifestyle you live with Sean, but we have our kids, and if we do this right, we can rebuild our lives. Are you okay with just me and us and what we're making and what we have? Because I don't want to push this and open this up and have to revisit all this trauma, and not just revisit the trauma in front of a therapist, but everybody in the fucking world, right? Like, that would have been the question. And if Cassie would have said, yes, Alex, I love you. It's not about the money. I love our life. I believe in you, and we'll build your brand, your business, and, I'm your ride or die, right? We don't hear about this. We don't hear about it from her. We might hear about it from other people, but we don't hear about it from her. And so what happens is, in that moment, Alex, who is Orpheus, looks back. And he gets Cassie to look back. And now everybody's looking back. And guess what? Even though she's not with Sean Combs, Cassie's back in hell. She's back in hell. She has to live with that every single day. And who knows? Maybe some great programmer, sliced her brain up like Swiss cheese, and she's just compartmentalized everything, and she can do it, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. So really what we're looking at here archetypally is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. And Eurydice is Cassie. Diddy is Hades, Scorpio. She's a virgin. And I guess maybe Alex Fine as a Pisces could be the minstrel, right? Like, he could play the role. But, if he did, he archetypally made the same mistake as Orpheus. He looked back. They looked back. Now, there's another version of the story which has a bit of a better ending. And it's because the Lord of the Underworld is a bit more negotiable. And that story is the story of Persephone and Pluto, right? And Persephone is in the underworld. She's captured, just like Eurydice. And Persephone is, like almost like a virgin, right? She has that virgin kind of quality, right? And she's the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. So Demeter's her mother. And Persephone is the goddess of vegetation. She's also known as Kore or Kore, Kore. And Demeter makes a deal. With Pluto. Says, can I have my daughter for 6 months out of the year? Yeah, you can do that. You can have her 6 months out of the year. And so who does Persephone become? She's related to springtime and summertime. That's when she emerges from the underworld. And then when autumn comes, she goes back into the earth and spends the next 6 months as part of the deal with Pluto / Hades. It has a better ending than Eurydice, but there is a psychological profile for both Persephone and Eurydice that is archetypal, and many women have had to go through this archetype. And I've had a number of clients that have had to go through this archetype. I had Carrie Otis on my show. I got to know Carrie a little bit. In fact, I actually owe her an email. Carrie Otis was a supermodel, and she wrote a great book called Beauty Interrupted. I highly recommend the book. It's a great read, and it is really the diary of Persephone. Like it is the diary of Persephone. And who does Carrie wind up hanging out with? Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke is the devil. At that part of his life and her life, he's the devil. The stories that she brings up about Mickey, not real pretty. Not real pretty. And then they did this movie together called Wild Orchid, a Zalman King film, and everybody panned her for, and she wasn't an actress. It was like this soft porn movie they did in Brazil, of all places, just like Black Orpheus. So I got to know Carrie, and I actually got to look at her chart. And if you are a woman, we'll keep it in the female category territory, okay? If you're a woman and you have Moon square Pluto or Venus square Pluto, you are a Persephonic Eurydice type. And almost every woman who has that square in their chart has had to deal with at least one man who was the devil and had a supernatural control over them. That would include everything from emotional, psychological, to physical violence and abuse. They're literally in bed with the devil. And the beautiful thing about Carrie is that, and this is really the sort of the integrative part of the whole process. The beautiful thing about Carrie is that she finally liberated herself from Mickey. Mickey was not a good guy. I don't know what in that relationship, not a good guy. But what's interesting about Carrie is that she had a whole history of like Persephone and Eurydice. And it all culminates with Mickey. So it wasn't just like all of a sudden overnight, like, oh, here's Mickey Rourke. He's really famous and handsome, and he likes me, and I'm going to be with him. No, that didn't. Like, you got to read the book. Like, there's a story about Carrie early in her life where she's in high school in Marin County. She's dating this football player. He's the captain of the football team. He's super popular, right? And one day she comes home, opens the door, and her mother tells her that her boyfriend is dead, that he overdosed on cocaine. That is Persephone, right? She's dealing with the underworld. And then she winds up going back to school, and everybody at school blamed her for his death. Not only that, but they called her out in an assembly in front of everybody. This is a true story. I'm not making this up, right? So Carrie, like people have certain spiritual, psychological, astrological imprimaturs. Like, there are archetypes and myths that people live out, and they have to, right? They have to live them out. It's part of who they are. Like, Carl Jung wasn't just spouting a bunch of shit when he started to talk about archetypes and the collective unconscious. So Carrie already had this. But in order to get through it and exercise it, she had to come face to face with Hades. And that was Mickey Rourke. And so what does she finally do? She finally extracts herself. And what does she do from there? She gets out of Hollywood, out of modeling. She studies Buddhism, like, hardcore Buddhism, not Nichiren Daishonin stuff, like, the hardcore Tibetan Buddhism, where they have like demons and shit, right? And bardos and all the things that the Tibetans knew about in terms of psychology and how they were able to contextualize it into a system. She learned all about that stuff. And then she studied Chinese medicine, and then she leaves Hollywood, leaves modeling. She meets a regular guy, right, who's solid. They have 2 children together, and Carrie is a successful, happy housewife and mother. But in order to get there, she had to go through hell, right? She had to go through Hades. She had to flip the Persephonic script. And so if you're a woman and you have that Moon-Pluto square or the Venus-Pluto square, you only have to go through it once, right? You only have to go through it once. You go through it once, you get the psychic integration. Like you have slept with the devil, literally slept with the devil, and you're done. You never have to go back. And I've seen this. I've seen this many clients. With men, it's different. And I don't want to get into men, because if I do, I'd have to start talking about your mother. So in a lot of ways, this is also part of Cassie's story. Being in the underworld. Diddy is Mickey, but Diddy is Mickey on fucking, well, Mickey probably took steroids, but Diddy is Mickey times 10. Like, he makes Mickey Rourke, look like a third-rate sort of fourth-dimensional lawn troll. So if we look at Cassie and her journey and everything she's kind of gone through, right, like that is archetypal. Even to the point where she's like a Virgo, right? And she's a virgin, and you get the 2 M's with Scorpio and Virgo, and with the M Virgo, those legs are crossed, and with Scorpio in the M, you got the tail up. So there is an archetypal telling of the story of these 2. How well has she integrated it? Is she at Carrie Otis level? Or any number of other women who have kind of gone down that path? I don't know. Time will tell. But from the archetypal version of Orpheus Eurydice, I don't think they passed that test. I don't think that Alex Fine, look back. You look back. Cassie looked back. I hope it was worth it for her. I hope it was worth it. So that's Saturn and Aries, right? We're getting into the underworld. Really, we really are. Saturn and Aries is like sulfuric. It's sulfuric. It's hot. Last Sunday night, I did a whole breakdown. The last 2 times, Saturn was in Aries. War, violence, war, violence, war, violence, riots. It's 1968. Shit's going bonkers in Vietnam, the war at home, the riots in Paris, conflicts all over the world. Like all over the world. And then you go into the 90s, you got the war in Kosovo, all these, Rwanda. Like it is a viscerally violent time. Here in the United States, you got the Atlantic City, Atlanta Olympic bombing, right? Richard Jewell. You've got Tim McVeigh, kind of in the run-up. And eventually he will, be a part of his execution will take place under Saturn and Aries. So, there's that side of things, like the supposed American domestic terrorist, right? That's sort of popping up and, it rearing its head during the latter part of the 90s, and you even have Bill Clinton going through the Monica Lewinsky impeachment trial, right? Bill Clinton's in hell. He's in hell. Bill Clinton, Libra rising, Aries on the descendant. His Saturn was going through his 7th house. Yeah, Bill, you were going through hell. And there was a reason why, because they wanted to compromise your ass so that you would shut the fuck up and just send troops to NATO and Kosovo or anywhere else in the world that they told you to, that we were supposed to be. Just shut the fuck up, or else we'll flip the other part of this impeachment and you'll be out of here. Right? So let me round this up because I want to think where I want to go. I want to round the Saturn and Aries up. I do want to talk about Hephaestus. And then I'm going to kind of go back and review the last 3 days on Rumble, because it all kind of ties in to everything that we're talking about. So I became very interested in the archetypes of not just astrology, but the archetypes of the gods as they relate to people. Because we all have archetypes that we express, right? Everybody, and some people, like people who are really powerful, right, or iconic, I believe they are the ones that are able to demonstrate their archetypal nature. The ones who are the most powerful integrate that, and their archetype does not become their downfall. Because a lot of times that can happen. Like somebody becomes an archetype and it becomes their downfall. Like, for instance, Madonna's an archetype. Like, what's her archetype? The Madonna whore. That's her archetype, right? She has the name Madonna, comes out with a song like a virgin, right? She, she's all, kind of squeaky, look, teeny, but by the end of Madonna's run, she's Madam X. What is Madam X? Madam X is basically like a fucking handler. She's a prostitutional handler. She's Madam X, right? And along the way, Madonna goes to Whoreville. Sorry, this is the way it is. And that's where the archetype consumes her, because she is the Madonna whore. That's her archetype. And she can't bring the two of them together. So she succumbs to, the whore part. And now she's completely disfigured. She's whored her body out to plastic surgery and who knows what else. Right? So that is a version of an archetype that consumes the person. Keanu Reeves is very archetypal. Keanu Reeves' archetype is the Cyberchrist. He's an avatar. It has not destroyed Keanu Reeves, as far as I know. Although I did see his podcast, and he should probably rethink that. Not everybody should have a podcast. Stick to movies, Keanu. But that's his archetype. But I think it fits him. He's a Virgo, sun in the 12th house. He can play the role. But because he's a Virgo, I don't think he takes it like the Neo thing or the John Wick thing or the Constantine thing or the Johnny Mnemonic thing or the Bill and Ted thing seriously. It's just a role. But that's his archetype. And it kind of shines through. He's very kind, very cordial to women. Women love him, right? Keanu Reeves is not dangerous. Keanu Reeves is not dangerous. And that's part of his archetype. And it has not consumed him. That is a version of an archetype where he has been able to kind of literally manage it. But there are other versions where everything just goes off the rails. So I became very interested in this idea of archetypes, personal expression, going back into the 80s when I started to really get into like Jung and Joseph Campbell and symbolism and the hero's journey and all that stuff, right? Like this is just like my jam. I love this stuff, and I could work with it in my own life and in the lives of others. And when I discovered Hephaestus, which is to me, is going to be one of the key figures of Saturn and Aries, because he is the smith and the forge of the underworld, where armaments and weapons are made. Okay, just keep that aside there. When I discovered Hephaestus and his archetypal resonance, I immediately recognized my father. Like, that's who he was. And one of the things that is characteristic of Hephaestus is that he's lame. Right? He's lame. I think he might have one leg shorter than the other, or something might have happened to one of his feet. Like, he is not confined to a wheelchair, but he also does not have like a normal gait. So there's something about Hephaestus and his wound that allows him to be more comfortable with the underworld, because nobody really has to see it. Right? He doesn't have to walk amongst the humans and show that he's lame or gimp. Right? He can live with that in the underworld and just come up with these beautiful swords or whatever, beautiful jewelry, whatever they're doing, whatever he's doing down there in the underworld. So Hephaestus is wounded. And my father was like, one of his passions was jewelry making, right? So I'm actually wearing 2 rings that he made. Okay. And he was very, very into jewelry. He did lost wax casting, and I would go in the garage, and that was like, that was like his underworld, right? It was the garage. It was kind of dark. He had all his equipment set up there, and I'd hang out there and I'd watch him make rings. And there was a part of me that like really enjoyed watching the process, because as a kid, there was fire involved, and if you're a kid and there's fire, it's always going to be cool, and he would do this thing, right, where he had this centrifugal I forget what you call it, but it was this centrifugal tool where he had the sort of like the crucible where the metal would be, like say the gold, right? And on the other side of that was this mold that had the mold of the ring, right, which had been waxed at a certain point, heated in an oven so that the wax would melt and the impression would be in this almost like plaster of Paris kind of hardened mold, right? And then he would put that in a bell jar, and he would suck out all the air bubbles. And then he would put that canister on the end of this centrifugal wheel, and on the other side of that was the crucible where the metals would be. And he would take a blowtorch, and whether it was silver or gold, he'd heat those metals up, right? And he'd add little powder to it, which I always thought was kind of cool, right? Add this little powder, and you'd see it come bubble up and dissolve it. I think it made it a little bit hotter. And then once the metal became liquid, right, he would let go of the centrifugal caster, and it'd spin round and round and round at like high speed. And then what would happen is that the hot metal would shoot into that canister with the mold, right? And eventually slow down. And then it would be this, right? But it would look like this. So then the next phase of that, which I was in charge of, because I was Hephaestus's apprentice here for a little while. And I love this part too, is that I would get the water going in the bathroom or bathroom sink. So I'd get a basin full of the water, and he would pick up this really hot canister, with these tongs, and he would drop it into the water, and it'd steam and get really, really hot. And then when it was cool enough, I'd go in and I'd dig it out, go through the plaster of Paris stuff, and there was the rough hewn version of the ring. And then what he would do is, like, there was a thing called the sprue. He'd cut the sprue off, and he would polish it. That was the next phase. He would polish the rings. And so I saw him do this many times, right? And he loved doing it, right? He could do all these other things too. Like my father was incredibly talented. He had an arc welder. He was Hephaestus. But my father's wound was not visible. He did not have, a lame leg or anything. My father's wound was emotional and psychological. And so he never moved out of the garage. Like my father could have been a professional jeweler. My father could have been a professional in anything. He really set his mind to it. He was that fucking talented. But as Hephaestus, his wound was psychological and emotional. And so my father always like kind of underperformed in the world. And it was, for me, very, very hard to see. And I talked about my grandmother, it was her birthday on May 15th, and a lot of his troubles and problems were with her. Like, they were with her. She, in many ways, was his version of the Moon-Pluto square, right? He was wounded, deeply, deeply wounded. And he did the best he could. He wasn't a perfect man. He had a terrible temper, really terrible temper, had to deal with that. But he was insanely gifted, deeply wounded. And that's when I began to really, it's like I could always see the archetypes, but once the archetype comes home and like you see that archetype as the person who raised you, then it becomes like a living, breathing example and something that's not just symbolic, right? So for me, Saturn in Aries and this whole idea of Hephaestus is a really interesting theme to look at as we move into Saturn in Aries, particularly for men. Keep it on the men's side of things, right? Just for a minute. Because I think while women have suffered their series of wounds, troubles, traumas, we got trafficking, we got slavery. All those things are real. Okay, so I need to put that on the table. Those things are real, and for a lot of women, it's very problematic, and especially when they're introduced to it at a very young age. It not only scars them for life. Sometimes they don't even make it out of their teens, depending on their environment, who's handling them. It's a very real thing. Okay, so I need to just put that out there. And even after that, like women do have like some issues, right? But now that I've recognized that, I want to talk about men. Because Hephaestus, in many ways, is the archetype for the modern man. Now, the modern man may not be walking around with a limp, but the modern man is wounded. He's clearly wounded. And the wounds that modern man, the male in our society, not every one of them, but a lot of us, a lot of them, us, we have experienced are psychological and emotional. And there are a lot of wounded young men and men out there. And I don't know if it's just like white men or black men or Latino men. It's men, right? Like there are a lot of black men who've kind of been dumped on, right? There are, right? But it's a different version of what I'm talking about, right? So the white heterosexual male, which I represent, has had a pretty rough go of it. And a lot of people say, oh, well, good, they deserve it. Assholes, karma, bitch. No, I don't believe that. First of all, I'm not a big believer in karma. But even if that were true, why should certain men who have nothing to do with something that might have happened, 100 years ago, where women couldn't vote and, had to stay at home and do whatever, right? Like, why should modern men have to like suffer for the sins, those supposed sins of the faulty and wounded forefathers or whatever you want to call them, right? No, no. That happened. It's over. Whatever happened is over. It's done. Right? It's done. It's just like this bullshit in South Africa. Oh, they're part of apartheid. We can't let them in. No, apartheid ended 35 fucking years ago. Okay, but those people have nothing to do. Like those kids that are coming up, they don't even know what the fuck apartheid is. Right? They have nothing to do with that. So this is what I'm talking about. And so modern man, the modern male is Hephaestus. He's in the underworld. He's wounded. And this is the time where, guess what? He gets to emerge. Wounds and all. Right? This is Saturn and Aries is going to be very interesting for men. We've already had Chiron in Aries for a long fucking time, and it's still there. That's the wounded man. That's the wounded male. Now here comes Saturn. Right? So you've had a whole generation, and we're going to call that Generation X, right? Who have gone through Chiron and Aries, going through the wound. Here comes Saturn. It's the integration. It's the integration of that particular wounding experience. And of all the generations, I would say Gen X males might be the most wounded, to be honest, because they're the ones that have Chiron and Aries. They're the ones who experience the most of divorces, right? With their parents. And I think they're the ones who begin to suffer the initial brunt of the system, and the system labeling boys as being dangerous and a threat. And being spirited became being hyperactive. Being in a classroom all fucking day turned itself into attention deficit disorder. Do you really understand? People don't get this. You're forced to stay in a box, and you're a young man, and your energy is connected to the natural fucking world. If it hasn't been like too polluted by you know what, you're like your rhythms are different, and yeah, you can sit down and do some learning, but that's not really where like the young man's spirit is. The young man's spirit, if you really want to like make a corollary, wants to be like out in the pasture, like with the sheep or the lambs or the goats or the horses. Or like that's kind of like in us, right? We came from that world. At some point, we all came from that world, no matter how civilized or urbanized we were. And there's a part of the psyche of young men that have that, right? And in other places, believe it or not, like I grew up in California, so I wasn't really part of a big hunting culture. But fuck, you go to Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, hunting culture. Hunting, fishing, like these are all part of the experience of the young male. Ernest Hemingway fucking writes about it. And so you stick these young men who have this in these boxes, right? Modern education, kind of new. It's kind of new. It's like all being sort of crafted after the 50s because that's when all the baby boomers are being born. So now we got to have an educational system. Before, we used to have the little country schoolhouse. And how do you think that worked? Probably a little bit different than our modern school system. I'm just guessing. So now all of a sudden you have these young men in these very unnatural environments. And what the fuck do you think they're going to do? They're going to get bored of shit, right? They're going to get bored of shit because they're not wired for that. They're just not wired for it. So they set up this curriculum. You're going to get up there at about 7:30 in the morning, right? 8 o'clock, you're just waking up. Your circadian rhythms are really not with it. And then you're going to be there till what, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30. If you're lucky, you get a couple of recesses and a lunch. And the rest of the day, you're in the box. So what do you think is going to happen? I was one of those kids. I was not there in the 80s when they started to pass out Ritalin. I wasn't there. And later Adderall. You know, they didn't have those things back then. They didn't have ADHD. I was that kid. My parents were always coming to parent-teacher conferences because I was kind of uncontrollable. If I had been born 20 years later, I would have been on some kind of a protocol. It would have been a DSM label for me. And this is what happens to the Gen X kids, Gen X boys in particular. They're the first generation, Chiron and Aries, and then later with Taurus, it's a different discussion, they're wounded. Johnny's got a problem. Johnny's bad. And there are even songs that come out and like demonize young men. Oingo boingo, only a lad. It's terrible. It paints a very, very dark and disturbing picture of a young man. So the Gen X guys got a raw fucking deal. Raw deal. Now here comes Saturn and Aries. And there's a lot of I love Gen X, by the way. I love Gen X. I think they're great. I think they're awesome. Gen X parented the Gen Zers. Congratulations for birthing and parenting the most base generation that we've seen in recent memory. We can thank Gen X for that, right? So Gen X, good job. But I really like Gen X. You know, they're the last link to the past. You know, some Gen Xers actually remember what a dial-up phone is. It's true. And now the earliest Gen Xers are kind of in their mid-50s. You know, they're kind of getting up there. And for the Gen X men, and I'm going to give you one. This guy perfectly fits the mold. And it's Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is clearly Gen X. He's early, born 1969. And Tucker Carlson, right, went through the Chiron return, which, by the way, I believe coincided with him leaving Fox. Interesting timing. He's got Saturn, right? He's got Saturn coming to his Chiron. And who was it? Somebody asked him about running for president or something like that. And it was Jason Whitlock. Jason Whitlock's another Gen Xer. And Tucker, poo-pooed it and laughed. But there's something about Saturn coming to the Chiron of all these Gen Xers that is going to force them in some ways to take a leadership role. Right? And if you Gen X women who have Chiron and Aries, you're going to have your own story with that. Like, do you get to not play a leadership role? No, I'm not saying that. But of the two, I believe that it is the male Gen Xers with Chiron and Aries that have the tougher go. They have the tougher go of it, right? That's my sense. And Saturn is coming in, and it's going to start to hit the various Chiron positions in their chart. And this is going to be their time to start really moving into leadership positions. The baby boomers are aging out. My little generation here, Gen Jones, we're kind of hanging on a little bit. But Gen X is younger. What I find interesting is that in terms of power structures, Gen X was kind of leapfrogged by the millennials. If you look at starting with Barack Obama and even going all the way up through Joe Biden, it is the millennials and Pluto and Scorpio who dominate the political landscape. Dominate. I was watching Tucker and Sean Ryan, and Sean Ryan said basically the White House was being run by millennial staffers when Joe Biden was president. Wrap your head around that. He didn't say Gen X people, right? Or political advisors or insiders or cabinet members or whatever they were, staffers. No, he said millennial. The millennials kind of leapfrogged Gen X in terms of power. I'm telling you right now. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it's true. You look at all the major influencers, right? They're millennials. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's a fucking millennial. The squads are millennials. Pete Buttigieg, millennial. Now, I guess you might be able to make a bit of a case for Kamala Harris as a Gen Xer. She's born 1964. I'm not really sure she's quite there. So Saturn and Aries coming in is going to have a big impact on millennial males. Chiron and Aries, you got Pluto and Libra in the background. Saturn's coming in opposing Pluto. It's like Gen X, not millennials. You Gen X males, this is your time. This is your time with Saturn. And it will not be necessarily easy, but you're next in line in the chain of command. And Saturn and Aries, based upon the fact that it's going to cross your Chirons, it's going to oppose your natal Plutos. This is your time. This is your time where you, with all of your Hephaestus wounds, come to the surface. So that means you got to give a shit. That's number one. You got to give a shit. And the other thing is you also can't give a shit about what other people think or say. Now, given that you have Pluto and Libra, you'll probably be very, very cordial. You'll be cordial. Most Pluto. Some Gen Xers have Pluto and Virgo. Like the lates, I'd say basically 66, 65, right? Going up through till 1983, 84. But there's the 70s. 70s Pluto goes into really like 1970 Pluto goes into Libra. So that like 4-year span, you're into that final Pluto and Virgo phase. Look, I think it's going to be a very interesting time. Very, very interesting. So the theme again with Saturn, and I'm going to cover some of this again on Sunday night. The theme of Saturn in Aries is the rise of Hephaestus, the wounded male, the wounded smith who has been in the underworld, kind of slaving away without recognition, because it's the wound that he does not want the world to see. Right. And it was my father. His wound was invisible. His wound was invisible. Like I believe Gen X males, their wounds are invisible. Again, this is a generation that went to shop. That's another very Hephaestian, kind of archetype. Shop kids. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you might have learned something from it. Maybe you could look at your own father, right, who might have been like that and had an incredible talent or skill or gift that, that had to do with their hands or, creating or crafting something, but they couldn't really always put it together and had to take a shit job because for whatever reason, the wound, the visible wound, the invisible wound. Maybe you can relate to some of this, and maybe you can relate to it even in your own life. It's going to be very interesting. I'll have plenty to talk about with Saturn and Aries on Sunday night. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to do a brief recap of the shows that I did on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Rumble. And the reason I want to do it is because, number one, a lot of people don't really get what I do over on Rumble. A lot of people don't. Oh, he has a Rumble channel, and I want to do because it will allow me, in summation, to talk about these things and not have to get into the weeds. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to start with the first show. Let me just see some comments before I go there. I can never find that channel. Let me just give you the link right here. I always leave it, almost always leave it in the chat on Astro Weather. My website will relaunch on June 11th, and all of the pertinent links that you need will be there. Everything you need to get in touch with me will be there as well. I will be fully integrated. Okay? Fully integrated. All right. So what I want to do here is I want to take you back into these three shows, and I will summarize them. But I do suggest you watch them, because there are layers here that I cannot do justice to. Okay. So we started off last week on Tuesday. Let's see here. And the amazing thing about all of this is just how process-oriented this whole thing has been, because I had no idea when I did the first show on Tuesday where I would wind up on Thursday. Okay? Had no idea. And this is one of the beautiful things about YouTube that I really love. And it's the ability to go down these rabbit holes and have the information kind of just unspool. Okay, so I'm just going to go back. I'll show you the thumbnails. This is the first show on 5/20/25. Did he do it? So I get into like a lot of the trial stuff and what's being said in the trial, and starting to break down the analysis of the relationship between Cassie Ventura, Sean Diddy Combs. Where did she come from? Who is she? How did she get to New York? What was she doing in New York? Who was her connections? She's like a maid girl, right? She starts hanging out in clubs. She's got a background in dance. She went to a private school in Connecticut, which look, there, it costs money to go there. It's not like you're going to public school, right? So there is some degree of, I would say, prestige that could possibly lead to get into something else, right? But it's not like she went to like a super, super exclusive private academy. And she winds up going to New York, and she hooks up with Wilhelmina Models, which is a modeling agency, which has a really weird dark past. One of the models of Wilhelmina came out and talked about how she was offered $15,000 to put Bill Cosby in a compromising position. Now, I'm not saying all models of Wilhelmina do that, but I don't think there was just like one potentially bad apple. And by the way, that woman did not do it. She didn't do it. It was against her morals. But modeling agencies are weird, man. They're really, really weird. You know, you've got the Lex Wexner modeling agency, Ford Models, Wilhelmina, and a lot of these models are, you know, a lot of them are programmed. Some of them are spooks. Like, models make great spooks because they get to travel the world. They get to hobnob with all these heads of state, wealthy people. Like, it is the greatest job for a fucking spook. So modeling agencies are also connected to intelligence agencies, military industrial complex, right? They all have some degree of connection. Some, it's very close and they work hand in glove. Others, perhaps a more marginal connection, but a connection nonetheless. That's where she comes into the picture through Wilhelmina. And then she meets this guy, Ryan Leslie. Here, I'll just bring this up. She meets this guy, Ryan Leslie. And Ryan is, she sees her at a club. He's a producer, and he gets her to sing a song, cut a song. And then Ryan, oh, I hate this. Sometimes the internet gets hung up. Ryan Leslie wants to do a deal with Diddy. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to blank out for a second. So I just need to resolve this. I'm going to blank out, but I'll be. Yeah, it always happens. Okay. So Ryan Leslie wants to cut a record with Diddy. There we go. Let's just put this right. We'll put this right here so you can see it. Come back. Ryan Leslie wants to do a record with Diddy. And he sets up a meeting and he, I believe, meets Diddy at his place in Long Island. And the word on the street is Ryan Leslie goes to the bathroom. And Diddy takes Cassie in a helicopter ride. And he's gone. And so Ryan Leslie comes out of the bathroom, like, where'd they go? You know, one of these, he took her on a helicopter ride to show her around the island or whatever, right? The next day, Cassie is with Diddy. The next day. Now, Ryan Leslie probably wasn't all that attached to Cassie. So, yeah, you can have her, but let's do a deal. Let's make a record. And that's what they do. And Ryan Leslie produces the first Cassie record, which has some nominal hits, sells about 300,000 copies. And then the next thing Diddy does is he starts bringing in all the producers and he wants to make the next record. Must have cut about 50 tracks. The next record eventually breaks. It's okay. She performs on, MTV, and apparently she really sucks. She has a decent voice, but she's got no stage presence. Like, this is not for you. But Diddy has another role for her in mind. She does some acting. She's in, Step Up to, right, the Streets. Like, it's a hip-hop dance movie. So she gets a couple movie roles. But then the main role she plays from that point forward is, like, she is Diddy's Mata Hari, right? And that's the role she plays. She helps put together the freak-offs. She helped arrange them. Like my guy Lyle said, she would go to the clubs with him, and she was the rabbit going down the rabbit hole. And she was there for 11 years. So I'm looking at this particular episode, this particular show in that vein. I'm just pulling things apart. I'm just trying to understand where she came from, how she got there, what the nature of the relationship is. I'm trying to untangle all of that. And then in comes Alex Fine. Okay. So Alex Fine is the son of Pamela Parker Fine. And when you go and look up Alex Fine's background, it is very, very scant. Somebody took great measures to sanitize Alex Fine's background. You won't find a lot about him. And what you do find is so over the fucking top, right? He was a football player. Now he's a trainer. They leave out the fact that he trained Diddy, because he did. And that's how he met Cassie. Oh, he trained Jennifer Aniston. He trained Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr., another freak at the freak-offs. Let's just put that right out there. He trained Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, he trained the cast of Riverdale. He's got some movie parts. He's got some TV parts. Oh, he's an excellent musician. He studied martial arts. He knows multiple languages. He has a foundation for women like his mother. He's got the Compton Cowboys, where kids from Compton can ride horses. He studied to be a bull rider. Like, what the fuck did this guy not do? Like, you read his bio, you're like, hey, look, maybe he's got all those talents. I don't know. It seems a bit over the top. But what they leave out is his parents. And once you find out who Alex Fine's parents are, in particular, Pam Fine, it is the skeleton key to everything. And I mean everything. So, who is Pam Fine? Pam Fine is a survivor. At least that's what she would have you believe. That Pam Fine was in an ongoing, long-term, abusive relationship. Who does that sound like? Kind of sounds like her daughter-in-law, doesn't it? Long-term abusive relationship. Can you guess what ethnicity the man that she was in the long-term abusive relationship with? And by the way, I'm going to define long-term. Yeah, he happens to be black. And her daughter-in-law was involved with who? In a long-term relationship? Okay, so we're getting into Gemini territory here, right? Mirrors. So Alex Fine's mother was in a, quote, in her terms, a relationship that was abusive. And so what does he do? He gets into a relationship with a woman who was in a relationship that was abusive. Personally, besides the fact that I think that he pushed for the money, that the devil whispered in his ear, right? And he's Orpheus and he looked back. And I think there is a big part of that Alex Fine is involved with. Alex Fine also has mommy issues. Alex Fine has mommy issues. And his mommy issues are connected to his now wife, Cassie. And I'm going to get into some of that. But I'm going to talk about Pam Fine. So as I went into Pam Fine world, I literally could not believe what I was finding. Her son played at Central Michigan University. He was on the football team, played defensive back. There was a coach at Central Michigan University. His name was Joe Tumpkin. Joe coached defense. And during the entirety of Alex's run at Central Michigan, Pam would run across Joe at team, family gatherings, whatever. And he was always kind of standoffish and not real super personal. And Pam, as she unwinds her story later on, says that for her, that should have been a red flag. I'm like, why? The guy's a fucking football coach, right? He's a football coach. You ever been around real football coaches? They're not very accessible, especially with their players. The players are not there to be their best friends. And she asked Alex about him. And Alex said, oh, he's really harsh. He's really rough on us. He doesn't say a lot of nice things about us. Guess what? He doesn't have to. He's a fucking football coach. All he wants you to do is perform. Know your plays, execute, don't fuck up. Right? That's it. He doesn't have to butter you up like a bagel. But that's her intel from Alex. Oh. So I guess there's this Thanksgiving dinner that the team is a part of. And Joe Tumpkin actually says hello to her. And she's like, oh. By the way, she's divorced by now. And you'll never find this out. You'll never know this because it never says anything about Alex Fine's parents being divorced. You have to find out later on her podcasts. So she meets Joe, and Joe's mother had just passed away. By the way, Joe's mother was a major minister in Southern Florida. She had the largest congregation in Southern Florida. And I've seen videos of Joe Tumpkin's mother. And let me tell you, that woman was a force. And Joe Tumpkin, on his Twitter page, he has no personal posts. All he has are posts that commemorate his mother. That's it. I went through all of them. I'm like, oh my God, let me watch some of these videos. So I got a picture of Joe Tumpkin's mother. So this is around the time that his mother passes away. Now, Alex plays the middleman and says, hey, Mom, Coach is going through a bit of a hard time. His mother passed away. I know you're really good with people. Maybe you can have some kind words for him. So they start a texting relationship. And that is in the latter part of November. By December, they're dating. It goes from a few kind words to Joe. Do you know this record by Marvin Gaye? Sexual Healing? I think that's really what you need. So they start to hit it off, right? There's no law disputing or saying that, Pam Fine can't hook up with the football coach. Happens all the time. But what happens next is the hand of destiny or fate or whatever you want to call it. The head coach of Central Michigan is moving on. So the assistants need to find new jobs. Joe gets a job at the University of Colorado. So he's leaving. He leaves December, January. Well, Pam decides that she's going to move to Colorado and get an apartment, and she's going to marry Joe. She met him in November, February, launch date. Just before she leaves for Colorado, she tells Alex. He didn't even know she was dating him, let alone she's leaving Michigan, going to Colorado, going to marry his ex-coach. Like, talk about a bombshell. Like, look, she's a grown woman and she can do whatever the fuck she wants, right? But that's her only child. And apparently, it's a really big deal. If she's such a great fucking communicator, she could have, in this process, she could have said, hey, Alex, I got to give you a heads up. Coach Tumpkin and I are getting close. I'm just letting you know. Now, I'm going to ask you ladies out there. And maybe I'm being too idealistic. And you could leave your comment in chat. You could leave your comment on the YouTube page. If that was you, and the man that you were about to not only be in a relationship with, but completely rearrange your life around, who had been your son's football coach at one point, would you at some point early in that process tell your son that, hey, look, I'm developing feelings for Coach so-and-so. And I need to give you the heads up and let you know. Because, I don't know where it's going to go, but, I think some of the conversations we had, it feels kind of serious. That's fine. So I would love to know where you're at with that. So, well, it's none of his business. And I get it. It's none of his business. Right. But then when he finds out about it, it's like, holy shit, my mother just dropped a bomb of chaos on my life. Well, you're going to find out that this is Pam Fine style. So now she has this theory that maybe Joe Tumpkin might be cheating on her. Now remember, they haven't been together that long. And she is supposed to show up in Colorado to meet him on a Friday. What does she do? She shows up to meet him on a Thursday, although he doesn't know that. Just like Alex didn't know that she was going to go shack up with Coach Joe. Coach Joe doesn't know that she's going to come to Boulder a day early. Now, I don't know how all of this happens, but she goes to I believe, the Renaissance Hotel, which is a big hotel in Boulder. And she's got to check in, and oh, lo and behold, who does she see at the bar? Coach Joe. And he's sitting with a woman. Now, in her mind, he's cheating on her. He's cheating on her. He's having a conversation with a woman at the bar. She doesn't know. So this is Pam Fine. She gets her phone. She calls him up from the lobby so she can watch him and see what he does with the phone. And then he looks at it and he lets it go to voicemail. Maybe he doesn't want to fucking talk to her. Look, after getting a full dose of her, I would have done the same thing. So now she goes into the bar and confronts him and says, "Did you miss a call?" And then this woman gets up and she leaves. He's like, "Where the fuck did you come from?" So they go up to her hotel room, I believe. This is where it all starts. And she says that he got violent with her. And he threw his iPad against the wall. I know exactly what happened. Pam Fine grabbed his iPad and wanted to see if he had calls, texts, pictures from other women. I guarantee you that's what she did. And he took it from her, and he got so pissed off, he's like, "Fuck it. I'm gonna throw this motherfucker against the wall." And later on, she's on this podcast, and she said that he had a bit of a history of like punching walls. But he was never violent towards her. He was always calm, mild-mannered. But when you get angry, he'd punch a wall. Like my kid does that. Some people, I've punched a wall at least once or twice. A lot of men have punched walls and worse other things. And then in this podcast, post-trial, she says, "Well, I gave him some strategies for his anger. I just tried to normalize it. I gave him a nickname. I called him Bam Bam." I'm kidding you not, okay? I am kidding you. She names him after a little white cave boy on the fucking Flintstones. She infantilizes Joe Tumpkin. And she says, maybe you should just get a golf club and beat the mattress. Pam, as much as you think you're a therapist, you're not a therapist. So what happens? It's clear that Pam is nuts. And Joe Tumpkin is having a Moon Pluto square moment. How do I get out of this relationship? But now he's also stuck with her because he probably said yes to her coming out there. So Joe is caught between worlds. And she really wants to embed herself into the University of Colorado football program. This is a thing which we will find later that Pam really likes to do. She likes to put herself at the center of everything, and she wants to be the psychotic den mother for everyone. So she begins to start a relationship with then coach Mike McIntyre. She's like, on such a first name basis, she doesn't call him Mike. She calls him Mac. Mac. And at that time, University of Colorado was having some issues with student athletes and women. We're sort of really, this is like, 2013, getting into 2015, we're getting into Me Too territory. It's just starting to raise its head, right? So Colorado's got a problem that has nothing to do with Joe Tumpkin. And I don't know what the nature of their relationship is. She probably drove him fucking insane. And she stops getting invited to the Colorado Buffalo activities. She doesn't get tickets to sit where the rest of the wags are. Wags, it's a name for wives that are the wives of either athletes or coaches. She's being frozen out, right? Nobody wants crazy Pam around. Joe Tumpkin probably went to, Mike McIntyre. Look, I don't want her here. Can you just, not invite her? Well, it's after she gets rebuffed by Coach McIntyre that she goes to the police and gives them a very long and detailed account of the abuse that she has suffered at the hands of Joe Tumpkin. It warrants 3 felony and 2 misdemeanor charges. And Joe Tumpkin is arrested. And he's put on trial. But guess what? The trial never takes place. Why? Because Pam Fine, who by this time had left Boulder to go back to Michigan, she won't go back to Boulder. She will not testify. She won't and the reason she won't testify is because the defense would shred her. There's no evidence. There's no bruising. Nothing. It is he said, she said. Now, did Joe Tumpkin do some stuff that he probably regrets? Yeah, probably. Was Joe Tumpkin a serial abuser? Did he have any history? If I showed you his mother, he may have some issues with dominant women, but that guy's not going to step too far out of line. So what happens is that after 2 years of his name being dragged through the mud, the prosecution and the judge come to a plea deal for Joe. And it's like, dude, just take this misdemeanor. Just take it. Everything else will be waived. Just take the misdemeanor and you'll get 30 days and the judge will suspend 30 days because you have 30 days probation. You'll get off. You get out of here. That's what he did. It's what he did. He took the misdemeanor. So on the day of sentencing, Pam Fine shows up. And does she show up? She turns his sentencing into her fucking spotlight moment. And she basically says a couple things and they're really weird. She said she really loved Joe. She loved Joe so much that she didn't want him to do any harm to himself or anyone else in the Colorado Buffalo family. She loved him that much that she pressed charges. That's how much she loved him. Ladies, I want you to remember that. When your husband kind of fucks up a little bit, just a little bit, right? Just remember that you love him so much that you want to save him from himself and other people and make his life an absolute living hell because you love him so much. Because that's what she did. And then she says, I can walk out of here today with my head held high and that I am not Joe Tumpkin's victim. I'm a survivor. That's what she said. And she uses this as a platform to become an advocate for survivors of abuse. And there's a podcast with her, which I've heard. I had to stop listening to it because I really wanted to vomit. And she talks about a story where she and Joe are at a restaurant. And he was so angry that when the waitress brought the appetizers and the entrees together, Joe slammed his hand on the table and was so upset that they were brought together that he demanded that she take the appetizers back. So the manager comes over. And the manager is addressing Joe, not her. And he says, listen, I'm really, really sorry. You should have gotten the appetizers first, and I'm going to comp you dinner. What does she do? She jumps right in. She says, oh, no, you're not going to comp us dinner. We're going to pay for it. And in fact, Joe owes her an apology. Bring her over. She does this to him at the dinner table. Like, can I get the steak knife, please? Joe, can you put your balls right there on the edge of the table? Is that the sharpest one you got? Like, this is what she does. She cuts his nuts off right there at the table. Like maybe he was pissed off at some other shit. Like, I get it. He's with her. And maybe, just maybe, after dinner's over, right, she say, hey, you know, when you did that thing with the waitress, you know, maybe you could walk up to her and give her an apology before we leave. It looks like she was pretty hurt. It wasn't really her fault. It's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I bet you she'd appreciate it. Like, that's what a reasonable partner who has their partner's back would do. What does she do? Shits on him. Who's the abuser there? Let me think. So that just about wraps up her Boulder chapter. But there's more. 2 days ago, I actually contacted Joe Tumpkin. I had a conversation with him. He was a very nice guy. I told him who I was. I told him what I was doing. And I told him why I was interested in speaking with him, because I think he got a bit of a raw deal. And I'm sure there were things where he crossed some boundaries. Like, I'm sure where there's some smoke, there's some fire. But I also feel like because he was in the crosshairs of these other situations, controversial situations at the University of Colorado, he had to take the fall. Like, the press and the university had to show that they were not going to be tolerant of any kind of sexual or domestic abuse. It is what it is, right? So I asked if he wanted to be on the show, and he may or may not be. Like, you know, he has to talk to some people, and if it's a fit legally or whatever, he'll do it. He'll do it. If not, it's okay. I may be able to just talk to him and, you know, do an interview with him and write it and not come on the show. I'll figure something out. And this is a long time ago, right? Like I think it finally ends in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And so I asked him, and I knew what he was doing. Like, you know, with the internet, you can find out what people are doing. And I knew that he lived in New Jersey and he's a trainer. And I just asked him, I said, well, how are you doing? Like, how are you doing with your life? He says, oh, man, I'm good. I'm good. I said, it looks like you're a trainer. Yeah, I'm a trainer. I'm a personal trainer. Guess who else is a personal trainer? Fucking Alex Fine. Like, what new level of weirdness are we at now? And he's in a relationship, and at night he's a security guard in Atlantic City. He says, my life's good, but, you know, I'm not doing the thing that I really love and really want to do. And I said, that's coaching, right? He says, yeah, that's coaching. He has not coached since. Joe Tumpkin is a man with a scarlet letter. And it's Alex Fine who helped brand him with that scarlet letter. Now, you would think that maybe, just maybe, Joe Tumpkin is a casualty a casualty of the heart on the road to romance and the cul-de-sac of breaking up. And that's just how life is. And Pamela Fine, with all of her insecurities, eccentricities, and what I would say highly narcissistic tendencies, was the person that kind of delivered that. And that's just the way it goes. But it's not. The story continues. On yesterday's show, as I dug through the Pamela Fine files, I found out that she was connected to a school shooting in Oxford, Michigan. And when I started to go down this rabbit hole, it made Joe Tumpkin and the Colorado story seem like tabloid fodder. This is fucking Truman Capote territory. This is dark shit. And it's dark shit all the way around. And I don't have a ton of time to completely unravel the case of Ethan Crumbley, but I'll do my best to summarize it. In 2021, when kids were coming back to school from COVID, having gone through a very traumatic, socially isolating situation where they're going to school on Zoom, there's no activities for these kids. It's really fucked. I had a son that went through that. He finally was able to get back to school when he was a senior and kind of reintegrate and then graduate, right? But that junior year was terrible. It was a lost year, totally lost year. And so Ethan Crumbley is one of those kids. I believe he's 15. And when he comes back to school, he starts to display very disturbing behavior. And one of the things, amongst others, is that one day he brings a jar to school with a decapitated head of a bird in it. Now, I know some of you out there might have some, dead animal fetish like David Lynch or whatever, but not a lot of kids bring decapitated bird heads to school. If I'm somebody at the school, I'm curious. Ethan, why are you carrying a decapitated bird head around? And it begins to get worse. There are stories going back to October about bullets, bullet casings. Ethan Crumbley has violence on his mind. Why does he have violence on his mind? Well, his family's really fucked up. He's got a fucked up family. And I don't want to get into the story of his family. His family's in jail because they were the ones that bought him the 9mm, which he would use to shoot up Oxford High. And I don't believe they should be in jail for that. Should they be in jail for being bad parents? Probably, because they were pretty bad. But they shouldn't be in jail because of what happened. They tried Ethan Crumbley as an adult at the age of 15, and our good friend AJ, who's a lawyer, laid it out for me. If you're being charged as an adult, then your parents are not culpable for your actions. No matter how bad they were parentally. Even if they purchased that 9mm handgun, if he's being tried as an adult, he's an adult. He's making decisions as an adult. He's taking choices as an adult. And at that point, his parents are not responsible. What's incredibly ironic is that Carmelo Anthony in Frisco, Texas, is being tried as a youth. And guess what? He gets to walk across the graduation stage. But let's return. Let's return to November 21st, 2021. This is the day that Ethan Crumbley goes postal at Oxford High. Guess who the lead counselor is there? The anti-bullying community restorative counselor is Pam Fine, Alex's mother. the woman who just completely trashed John Tumpkin's professional career, she's the one that is managing the shooter. And by the way, I'm going to be on record here. She completely mismanages the shooter. Now, there is a report, there was an independent report that came out and said that they did everything they were supposed to do. That's not true. By law, Pam Fine had the ability to do two things when and they should have, because there was plenty of evidence that Ethan Crumley was a time bomb that was about to go off, including this graphic, which you see there, that has a gun, limbs missing, bullets. He can't stop the voices in his head. I was born into the wrong family. He is fucking troubled. He needs help. And Pam Fine is the person at the school who is supposedly responsible for helping this young man. The day before, he goes to see her, another counselor named Hopkins, and I think the vice president, his name is Vijak. 5 minutes. He's with them for 5 minutes. She calls the parents, leaves a message, and they say, well, it's probably better if he went back into the class where he can be supervised. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The next day rolls around. He's even more troubled. He's watching videos in the classroom. Cell phones should not be allowed in classrooms. Sorry, no, not sorry. No, keep fucking cell phones out of fucking classrooms. So 15-year-olds don't send dick pics to their teachers, because you know that is what's happening. Just saying. The teacher brings this up to the office, to the attention of Pam. Now, there are two reports here that contradict each other. One report is that Pam's not there. Well, Pam, where the hell are you? School started. First periods happened. Pam was 40 minutes away from Rochester. How do I know? Because she said it on her fucking podcast. Now this thing is going next level. You have Hopkins, who's a counselor, like a counselor. Then you have the assistant vice. The principal's never notified, by the way. Never notified. These two decide they're going to handle it. Handle it. Interesting term. Is there any commentary or notes that they try to get Pam on a conference call? No. Did they call Pam to come in and deal with this? No. Did they even talk to Pam? No. There's no mention of any of that. None whatsoever. Okay. So we're just assuming that, well, old Pam had the day off. When Ethan Crumley is in the office, he brings with him his backpack. In the backpack, he has a 9mm pistol. Neither the counselor nor the vice principal checked the backpack. And by law, they could have. They supposedly call the parents to come pick him up and put him in a place where he gets some observation. And according to their testimony, the parents said, we can't make it because we have to work. That's false. That was refuted later on. So they lied about that. Totally lied about that. So what do? They send Ethan Crumley back to school. And what does Ethan do? Shoots and kills 4 kids. This is true. This is not some weird psyopy thing. Shoots and kills 4 kids. About half a dozen more wounded. Parents are outraged. Outraged. They hire a third party finally to go through and try to do like a forensic on the whole thing. I'm not sure that they did a very good job of it. There might have been a little whitewashing here. The school district told all the employees not to speak with the third party. I believe they're called Guidepost. That was the don't talk to Guidepost. Don't talk to Guidepost. The 4 parents who lost kids filed civil suits, like Cassie, by the way, filed civil suits against the school district, the principal, vice principal, Hopkins, and Pam Fine, along with the parents of Ethan Grumley. All had civil suits, right? All of them. Pam Fine is named in all the civil suits. Now, when they broke the story that none of the employees were to talk publicly or address the situation or talk with Guidepost, there was one employee who didn't listen. Can you guess which one it was? And what does she say? It is fucking just embarrassing. Not only is it embarrassing, but it really calls into question if she was absent that morning. In the brief paragraph, she said, I felt like I needed to speak out because the parents needed to hear, the truth. The truth according to Pam. And the truth is, I love those kids, and those kids love me. Really? How much do they love you, Pam? Like, she's now setting herself up to be the person who is the most caring, the most compassionate person at that school, and that she did everything she could in order to avert this tragic event. And in fact, I was there when the first responders arrived, and I was on the video cameras watching him go room to room and working with law enforcement. Okay. That is a lot fucking different. These are her words. I'm not making them up. It's a lot different than Pam was not at the school that morning. So when did Pam get to the school? That's what I want to know. Now, if Pam they said to Pam, hey, Pam, you got to get here. We have first responders and we got a shooter. Remember, she lives 40 minutes away from the school. And at that point in time, the school's on lockdown. Now, I know some parents went there, right? So even getting into the school for Pam might have been a bit problematic. Or maybe she was there the whole time. Maybe that when the note came to the office, which might have been around 8:30, Pam Fine showed up at 9:30. I don't know. I don't know the story completely, but it's very suspicious in that, and the shooting happens early. It's early in the day, and she's there waving the first responders in, right? And it's like, I'll be on the CCTV. Stay in touch with me. Now all of a sudden she's a fucking crisis intervention artist. And she's named in all these suits, and the legal system in that area dismissed all of them, saying neither the school nor the school district nor any of the employees named in the suits were liable for the deaths of the 2 young men and 2 young women who were shot and killed at Oxford High. And you know what's really ironic about that? When John Tumpkin had his felony charges dropped to a misdemeanor Pam Fine. Pam Fine cried, holy hell. She pointed her finger at the legal system, how it was unfair and unjust to women, and that they were part of the problem, right? They were the ones who have enabled Joe Tumpkin all along. And even when it was time for Joe Tumpkin to face his accuser and to suffer the most punitive charges and penalties against him, he had to deal with a misdemeanor. Pam wasn't happy with that. She wanted Joe Tumpkin. I'll tell you what she wanted. She wanted that motherfucker in prison for life. If that had gone to a jury, and it wouldn't have, because the jury would have gotten one whiff of Pam Fine, and they would have been, can we charge her? I'm serious. They knew they had no case, but they had to do something. She wanted that man in jail for the rest of his fucking life. And if that had happened, let's just say it went to the jury and the jury said, this is terrible. We can't let a man like this out into the world. We're going to put him in prison for 25 years. I think Pam would have been happy. She would have been happy, right? That would have been like the fucking ring from the Lord of the Rings. She would have got it. She didn't. And she bitched and moaned and bitched and moaned and bitched and moaned. And, you know, the legal system's corrupt. It's run by men. And, you know, bullshit. Well, guess what? The same fucking legal system took her off the hook for potentially, and I'm using the word potentially because I have to be careful, for potentially not being able to avert and save the deaths of 4 people. Yeah, the same legal system that didn't do enough to Joe Tumpkin took Pam off the hook. I didn't hear her crying about the legal system then. She's probably saying, well, I love our legal system. You know, it protects the protectors, and I'm a protector. This is the mother of Alex Fine, who's married to Cassidy, who's suing Sean Diddy Combs. Alex has mother issues. Deep mother issues. That's some Pluto moon square shit. I don't know what his chart looks like. Probably find out. It's just weird, right? It's weird. It's like weird. And so when you look at the two worlds and how they're really strangely matched. When I look at Pam Fine's case against Joe Tumpkin, I think it's he said, she said. I think she probably drove him nuts. He probably had some impulse control issues every now and then, but she didn't leave. She could have left. Didn't. Right? Didn't. She wanted, you know what she wanted? She wanted the Colorado Buffalo. She wanted the Colorado Buffalo version of the Cassie Diddy lifestyle. I'm telling you that right now. She wanted to sit with all the wives. She wanted to go to all the team functions. She wanted to travel to the away games and get flown on the plane by the university and go to the away games. That's what she wanted, right? She wanted the perks of being the girlfriend, wife of a college football coach at a major program. And whatever else she was getting from Joe. I don't know whatever else she was getting from Joe. Let your imagination be your guide. That's what she wanted. That is what she wanted. What did Cassie want? She wanted a version of the same thing. She got it. There was a price to pay, but she got it. The two are not very dissimilar. And then there's Alex. He's right in the middle. Right in the middle of it all. And nobody has talked about this woman. Nobody. Nobody's touched it. Right? Nobody's talked about the bizarre contrast, yet at the same time, mirroring of her and Joe and Cassie and Diddy, right? Like, it's really fucking weird. Nobody's talking about it. And I think most importantly, nobody's really talking about the role that she played, where I believe, and it's my belief, that she could have prevented the deaths of those 4 kids. It's my belief. Okay? My belief. And the reason it is my belief is because I have read the reports, and legally she could have called CPS, the police, at any time. Not only that, but I'm going to go one step further. As somebody with such an important role like hers, anti-bullying, she's one of the first people. She is like, I don't know, the Susan B. Anthony of anti-bullying. She's the Rosa Parks of anti-bullying. At least that's what she'd like to think. Now, there are all these school shootings that happen. You know them, right? Sandy Hook, Parkland, a bunch of others. Now, if you're a person in her position and you know that these things have happened, and they have happened, wouldn't you sit down and say, hey, look, we need to have a freaking protocol here, right? We need to know what to do if we have a student that is exhibiting strange behavior. Remember Nicholas Cruz from Parkland, the strange behavior kid? Like, he's the poster child. So if you were Pam or any other person, like, what do we do? What's the protocol? What are the steps we have to take? What are our legal responsibilities? And, where can we go and not go? What happens if one of us isn't here? Like, why wasn't that done? Like, if you're really, really good at your job and your goal is to protect the kids at any cost, you will do that. So that if and when Ethan Crumbly, who was really troubled, shows up one day, there you go. You got the manual. You're not flying by the seat of your fucking pants. You're not leaving the mother a 5-minute message or meeting with him for 5 minutes, which is, by the way, it's on the record. That's how long they met with him the day before. 5 minutes. And it's on the record that he left them a message. Like, you have a protocol. And they knew he was disturbed well before those 2 days. That fuels my belief. So this is what I've been doing on Rumble for the last 3 days. And if you have any, and I basically outlined, there's more. There's a lot more in there. If you feel like you want to watch those shows, they're there. I think it's really solid journalistic work, and I wish other people would pick up on this thread. And I'm not going to drop it. I have some other ideas I don't want to talk about right now, but I'm not going to drop it because this woman ruined one man's life. Joe Tumpkin has never coached football again, and I don't believe he's an animal. I talked to the dude, right? He sounds very gentle. She even said that. She even described him as that. I've seen videos of his mother, like one of the most powerful Black preachers in Southern Florida, biggest congregation. I don't think he's a bad dude. Did he make a mistake? Sure. The mistake he made was hooking up with her. And the biggest mistake he made was, for whatever reason, keeping her around. And that's on him. Like, that's on him. But does that warrant him not being able to coach football again? Never had any priors. No history of domestic abuse. Fine. None of it. Never been arrested. None of it. And for the one thing that he did, which was hook up with this woman professionally, he's cooked. And then we get into Oxford High. And that is tragic. I'm just, how does this woman sleep at night? How does she sleep at night? In her mind, she's the hero. I swear to God, in her mind, she's the hero. She's the heroine. In her mind, she believes that probably more kids could have died if it wasn't for her. I guarantee you she would say something like that. If it wasn't for me, it could have been worse. Anyway, that's what happens at Rumble. All right. Thank you for being here and listening and participating. Steve, I wondered that. I think she's a useful idiot. So, okay. Now, Harriet, you bring up something really interesting. So the defense blew through Cassie like Swiss cheese. Cassie has jeopardized the government's case against Diddy. And she's jeopardized the case because there's a series of email and texts between Cassie and Diddy while she's with Ryan. And how she says, I feel lost without you, to Diddy. And there's even an exchange where she says she wishes she could start the freak offs all over again from the very first one. Like the magic of the first. She says this, okay? That's on the record. TMZ put it out, right? TMZ doesn't print things where they can get sued. Cassie, with those emails and texts, completely undermined a lot of the case against Diddy and her. And if you're Alex, is that worth $20 million? Really? Is it really worth $20 million to have the mother who's pregnant, your child, up on the witness stand, and that child is taking all that in? That child's be like fucking Rosemary's Baby. Taking all that in. Is that worth it? Is it worth to have those emails come out to show that, well, you were with her, like she was not with you, technically speaking? Is it worth it? How's that feel? The $20 million cuck. Slick just said the curse of Cassandra comes to mind in major ways. Apollo gifted her with prophecy, but when she failed to please his terms, he licked her lips so no one would ever believe the truth she always spoke. Yes. Oh, look at this. Transiting asteroid Orpheus is making a conjunction to Alex Fine's natal sun. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. That is kind of a fuck yeah astrological moment, right? Where else are you going to get this stuff? I mean, not just for me. Look at this. Chantaria coming with the gravy. We got gravy dealers here. Thank you, Lisa. Oh, I have got to use that on fucking Twitter. That is awesome. What an awesome find. Awesome, awesome find. Amber Heard vibes. Yeah, absolutely. Harriet, total narcissistic behavior patterns, gaslighting, manipulation, passive aggressive, no need to. You got it. You got it. And this woman is still employed by the school. Wrap your head around that. Wrap your head around fucking that. Cursey Cassandra all the way. Man. All right. Thanks for being here. I had no idea what I was going to do today, but it got done. And you know what the cool thing is? You guys are always part of the getting done. You're always part of it, right? Whether you're adding contributions to the comments or just being part of the field, right? You're part of the getting done. So I want to thank you for that. Don't forget our sponsor, True Hemp Science. Chris is going to have a booth out here at the Kerrville Folk Festival this weekend. So if you're out here in Kerrville and you want to come to Kerrville Folk Festival, you get some CBD with some good old folk and country music here in the hill country of Texas. Come on down. But if not, you go to the website and spend $100, type in 15MINS, get the goodie bag and the gummies. $150 get you free shipping, always a 30-day money-back guarantee. All right, before I go, I just want to share something with you guys. We'll share. It's a funny share. It's like, like an inside baseball share. So I'm doing this event with David, and it's happening, right? So doing this event with David, and it was late, and I was in kind of a mood, right? I don't know. I was just in a mood. And so I was texting Mark, and they needed a picture of me. And so I texted this picture to Mark, and I said, should I use this picture? And I showed it to him. And he says, yeah, I kind of like it. It's kind of a, kind of gritty, French New Wave sort of vibe. And I'm like, yeah, man, I want to use this picture because I think, it's really going to stand out. It's not very New Agey. So this was the picture I sent them right here. I'm sorry. I think this is really funny. Right? So I woke up this morning. I thought, maybe I shouldn't use that picture. So I got back to them and I said, I thought it might have been a good choice for kind of an artsy sort of rendition of me, but on second thought, let me send you another picture. Anyway, there you go. It's a little inside baseball. I changed the picture. I'm sorry, I changed the picture because not everybody would have gotten it, right? They wouldn't have gotten it. So I went with something a little more mainstream. There you go. I just wanted to share. All right, take good care. Treat each other well. Take care of yourselves. Love you all. God bless you all. Robert Phoenix signing off.